And I said, well, at least talk to me. Just give me 5 minutes. Give me a chance. And that is something that I've always carried on life. And my thing is, if the worst they can tell you is no, and you could survive that no, you're good. But if you don't try, if you don't knock on that door, you don't know if they're going to say yes.
What happens when you stop trying to fit in and start owning exactly who you are? On this episode, I sit down with Sybil MacDonald, a media coach, public speaking expert, and the founder of Elevate, a company dedicated to helping people own their voice and show up with confidence. We talk about how speaking authentically can completely transform your career. Sybil shares why embracing your individuality is the ultimate power move, and why no one should underestimate the value of a handwritten thank you note. Get ready for a conversation full of wisdom and reminders that the most powerful thing you can be is yourself, here on Navigating No. Sybil, thank you very much for coming and sitting down with me and spending a little time, but giving me your advice over the last year, actually. And so thank you for being a part of this and sharing your story with me.
Well, thank you. I've been seeing the podcast grow and grow, and I'm so excited to be a part of it.
Well, I've wanted you on for a while, and for people to understand your background, you came up from LA, and your focus was marketing, but you're giving with your time. And right before we went on air, we started discussing about the fact that it's about giving back to people.
Sure.
You get to a certain point in your life, and it's like, why not be that mentor to people and give that advice? Because it raises everybody up in the sea. But how can the audience, can you give them a little bit of background on your story of coming up?
Okay, of coming up. Well, it's very interesting because we actually discovered Spokane because my son wanted...
It's on the map.
Well, on the one hand, it's on the map.
Right.
But on the other, my son was going to a Jesuit high school, and he started looking at colleges, and he came home one day and he said, there's this great school, Gonzaga, in Spokane. And we were really entrenched in LA, and it was like, okay, well, let's go check it out. And we came up to Spokane, and we were blown away by the city. And I'll tell you, it's a city on the rise. And that's really exciting. Not only with subsequent trips where we're seeing new restaurants, things happening in the downtown, but also business. This is a city where you've got a lot of new entrepreneurs, people getting ready to catapult, and that's really exciting for us.
Well, and I agree with that because, I mean, I moved away for almost 30 years and I came back, and it was like, we do have a P.F. Chang's now, but it was like Spokane has grown, and not only like we don't have a zoo yet, but at the same time, I guess we have cats, right? But it has grown, and it's like our schools have grown, and just the communities and people coming in from outside, and it has, and the talent pool here has exponentially exploded, I think.
Oh, yeah. And for us, it was really interesting. So our son Ryan started at Gonzaga. And
how many years ago was this?
This was probably about 5-6 years ago.
So you recently moved up.
We moved up, and I'll tell you how that happened. So we were in LA. Things were really on a decline in a lot of ways. The pandemic hit, which was really hard in Los Angeles. And my husband got a call from someone saying, hey, there's this job in Spokane. Your son's up there, right? And he said, well, yeah. And it was for the director of economic development for the city. Now, Steve was in private equity, and he had done things like he was president of Film LA at one point, worked with a mayor in business development. And so he was like, wow, this could be a fun thing. And Ryan's up there. Why don't I interview? And I said, absolutely, just go.
Did Ryan know about this?
Yeah. The whole idea, we thought it was
surprise him. Yeah.
It was almost going to be like a practice interview, which is never a bad thing. I said, go to dinner to Wooden City, fly back. It'll be fun. So what we didn't expect is that the day after he interviewed, he got the job offer.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, I mean, he decided to accept the job, and we packed up the house. We bought a house up here. We staged a house in LA, sold a house in LA, moved in 5 weeks. In 5 weeks.
Oh.
So I had no time to think about it. We just did it.
And other than coming and visiting Gonzaga with your son, Ryan, had you been here enough times that you were like, we kind of know the general area we want to live in? Or was it just like, let's just buy a house?
Yeah, no, we kind of had an idea of the house because of where the area that we liked.
Mm-hmm.
But the market was really crazy at the time. And for a point, I thought, we'll rent and then settle in. And then my son and I were on Zillow, me in Los Angeles, him up here.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hey, there's a house that just popped up on the market. Really? And he says, I'm going to go check it out. It's really perfect. It's in the South Hill, la, la, la. So he calls me at about like 5 p.m. He says, I'm at the house. And he's with an iPhone going, look, look, look. And I said, hold it steady. He goes, no, it's perfect. Make the offer. Make the offer. So this was on a Thursday evening. We made an offer on Saturday. They accepted on Monday. I flew up, did the inspection on Wednesday. I mean, we bought a house online. I never would have thought that we would have done that. Yeah. But we're very happy. It just was like.
It worked for you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The pandemic hit right when we had kind of given up on looking for a home too, from Seattle moving over here. And it was like, we were getting outbid by people, and it was just like, it was a crazy market. And we never had the intention of building. But we were at that point where it was like, oh, is this going to be right for us? And so many of our neighbors within there bought online, and they just decided, but we happen to be up here at that time, but it's different now. I mean, it's like, you can see so much, and how lucky that Ryan was here to be able to FaceTime.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I know. How crazy is that? But we love being up here.
How much pushback did you get though, being from California?
Well, initially, my neighbors told me to immediately change out my
phone
license
number?
plate.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
That was the first thing, because I did have a couple people yell things, and that's okay. And we moved in October, which I think was a bit of a mistake because people isolate in the winter. So that first year was tough. Because I didn't know a lot of people, and it was just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit in? I kept doing business in Los Angeles and New York. And so I was kind of had that comfort zone, and I was traveling a bit.
So you were going back and forth because you didn't just all of a sudden give up and leave your job, right?
Exactly.
But okay, what was that like? Like, your husband obviously had a job. Okay, so that was great. And Ryan's going to school, but you have a career. You have a successful business in LA. How hard was it for you to walk away from that, or kind of leave that behind, or I guess kind of slowly transition?
Well, it was difficult in the sense that, I owned my own business, marketing and communications, and I had a lot of government clients in California, state and city levels. And when I announced that I was leaving, they were like, okay, see ya, because they really wanted to work. Yeah, they wanted to keep California-based companies' ownerships in their contracts. So I lost business there. Some other clients, though, interestingly said, just give us a new address to send the check.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
And we'll continue on. We're happy, et cetera. So I did that for about the first 2 years. I stayed with that model. And then I started looking around saying, wait a minute, I live in Spokane now. Why am I not looking to pursue some projects thing here locally in the city?
Yeah.
I have a few tricks up my sleeve, and I'm interested in what's going on. So a couple things happened. One, I was invited to join the board of the Spokane Symphony. And so I said, well, one of the things I can do is pro bono publicity. So I started doing some things for them. And then it evolved, interestingly, into doing some contract work for the Mac. I was hired 2 weeks before Minecraft launched.
Okay.
And they said, just do a publicity plan. And that was like really a lot of fun because I did things that they had never done before. I said, we're doing live TV. but we've not done that.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. Let's try it out. Let's do a press conference. Let's do with this. And so it was a lot of fun. So I did Minecraft for them, the Belays exhibition, Reynaldo Gil Zambrano, another one there. And that was a lot of fun. It was good doing publicity. And in that time period, I started going to a lot of events, business events, and just observing. What is the pulse? What are things? And I started getting really excited, seeing all of the new business growth that was happening and opportunity. And one of the things I specialized in LA was training high-level executives on doing the big presentation, the big business pitch. Also with nonprofits, they're going after the Annenberg money or something. How do they go in front of this big, important group and really secure the big bucks? And my business evolved and I started doing that. I also did crisis management for a lot of big entities.
Well, and that reminds me of like a radon event based out of LA. But what's interesting is that you're sitting in these business meetings, you're on these boards and you're like observing and you're seeing what is missing. Right? You're seeing a problem that maybe Spokane isn't taking advantage of, but you have the expertise that you can come in here and fill that void, solve that problem, and solving that for people. So as you were taking note of this and you started to realize that maybe there was the ability to expand your business locally, is there something that you were just like, I'm going to go full board, I'm just going to go all in now, and I'm not taking that little break, and I'm just going to hit after it?
Yeah. And so one day I thought, okay, let's do a niche business that specializes in media training, getting people up on stage. You know, one thing is to be a CEO or an inventor. The other is to be able to perform and to get your message out in a way that's compelling. And that's where a lot of people fumble. You hear it. They get on stage and they start with, I really have this great thing to talk about, but or I've even seen people accept awards with an iPhone, just reading a speech on an iPhone on a stage.
Yes.
And it's like,
yes,
it's not that they're not able to do it. They've never been properly trained to do it. And when they get over their fears, their quirks or what have you, and they really learn to perform, because really when you're presenting, you're on stage. When you're in a press conference, you're on stage. At a conference proper, you're on stage. How do you learn to be on stage?
Well, and Warren Buffett mentioned that several years back where he said, like, the ability to public speak is a skill that will take you forever. And if you don't have the ability to speak, it's going to be a hindrance. It's going to hold you back forever. And so it's like one of the things that you can invest in is learning to speak. And I was lucky as a kid to be put into martial arts classes and teach kids and being put into an uncomfortable position to where I had to speak in front of 20 kids or 50 kids. And I started to realize like the worst thing that can happen is I fumble my words or I would mess up or I would say an error. But it was like the more practice I got at it, the more comfortable I got with it. But I have also devoted time and mentored people about speaking publicly. And it's like one of the things is that everybody shakes. Right, with that paper. And so you got to get rid of that paper. And I've seen so many people, because I have a feeling like you, whenever you go somewhere, you start to see what people do. I watch comedians all the time. How are they on stage? What's their pause? How do they walk the stage? What do they wear? What do they dress like? And I see how people speak, and I take those cues and I try to say, do I do the same thing? But you didn't always have, you didn't just all of a sudden know how to speak. That's kind of your talent skill, and that's kind of what you worked along. So can we change gears and go back to how you actually got into that business, like what your background is of how did you become an expert of being able to tell someone like, by the way, you need to put the iPhone down and speak from your heart?
Well, I started my career in television, so I'm a very visual person. And I worked at CBS, collaborated a lot with news in particular. I was the director of communications at KCBS TV, and I also worked a lot in entertainment with Nickelodeon, MTV, Paramount Television, so a lot of visuals. And so I started helping people that were not used to being on camera. as to how to get their talking points down to sound bites.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people have a great thing to say, but they take 5 minutes to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And it never makes it on TV, for example, on interviews. And so it's like, how do you consolidate what your message is?
And this is way
How do you
before
focus?
shorts, like today with shorts. You're saying that even 15, 20 years ago, you were telling people, like, be more precise of what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay.
And words started getting around. Sibyl's got this neck. I didn't really start
Yeah.
my journey that way,
Yeah.
but I was hired by a Los Angeles City Council member who wanted to run for Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wasn't getting what we call ink and no publicity.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, why is it that this talented man who had a great heart, who had a great message, why was he not getting interviews
Mm-hmm.
in chamber or just getting any kind of recognition? And so I was brought in initially. I said, let me observe the operation and observe him. Well, this guy talked and talked and talked. And I knew it was really bad when he would get up to the podium to speak at council chambers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the cue for other council members to get up and go get their coffee in the back.
Ouch.
Because he just rambled.
Yeah.
And I started looking at everything that was happening, and he had a great legislative team, but they would just give him 30 sheets of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh my gosh, no wonder the guy's like, well, something that's really important in the San Fernando Valley is,
Mm-hmm.
and just didn't know how to manage it. So I said, okay, we're going to look at this from a perspective of television. What is going to get you that pow moment?
Mm-hmm.
What is the phrase that is going to get everyone to pivot, turn around, see you, and you're going to get quoted?
Mm-hmm.
So we started developing, and I took this from Reader's Digest that my mom used to read. It's called Quotable Quotes.
Okay.
What is your soundbite? What is the most powerful sentence or two that you could say that stops the room?
And that could be for your brand, your image, your business.
Exactly.
Anything. Okay.
Your message, your promotional thing, anything. And so with Tony, we started doing that, and it just changed the paradigm. All of a sudden, he just knew, and I taught him how to do the pregnant pause, how to be powerful in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And we started seeing him on the news, people started getting proactive where people were calling him for interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just changed things. And I'm really proud to say that he is in his second term in Congress. And so I can't really mention the full name,
Yeah.
but he's done very well. And I think some of it had to do with just learning how to speak, how to deliver the message.
Isn't that interesting? Like, you could have the greatest story, or you could have the greatest solution to a problem, and if people don't know about it and you cannot communicate that correctly,
Mm-hmm.
it just loses it, right?
Exactly.
And you and I have actually talked about that with me personally, as not only a public speaker, but even with the podcast. And it's like, what is my message? What is my quote? What is my line that I've got to deliver? How can I be more precise? What is your image? What is your focus? And what is your actual brand?
Mm-hmm.
And really focusing in on that is so important. And I think that goes for all the audience and anybody listening to this, is that it's I don't care what service industry you're in, or what company you own, or where, if you're just a customer, it's being able to focus in on what you really are good at, and being able to deliver that, I think, is imperative
Mm-hmm.
to succeed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when I take on clients, that tends to be the toughest exercise, is tell me in 2 sentences what you're about. What is your business about, in a way that engages me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Keeps the
compels
audience
me.
engaged.
Exactly.
And-
It
and-
wins me over, that gets me wanting to hear more. And that tends to be the hardest thing, even for people that have been in business for 20 years. They start to say, well, we build this, we do that, we do this,
Yeah.
we do that. What is your core message?
I love that. But that is also going back to what you had said when you listened to the future of congressmen at that time. Like, you were listening, and then you were waiting for them to catch something or him to say something the way it turned the audience, right? And that I'm assuming that's what you're saying right now too.
Exactly.
No matter what industry you're in, it's like, what's that thing that's going to get the audience to engage or listen or I guess give money, right? If you're asking for something, like how are you asking? If you're pitching for fundraising or anything like that, it's like, what are you pitching? What is your value?
Exactly. And that really goes back to my publicity arm. And when you're pitching a client or things, calling network news or something and saying, I've got a great story. The guy on the other end, the assignment desk manager, the first thing is like, why should I care? You've got to give a message that so grabs that assignment desk editor that they say, our camera has to be there. And that's my training, is like, I've got to shape a story in such a way that it answers the question, why should I care? How am I why should I engage with you? And then I take it one step further. I really want to learn more. Not only engage with you, but I want to learn more. And that's how in business you start to grow. You start to get that message out.
How and that seems like it seems like that would be just as I'm trying to get in shape, and I tell people like, well, let's look at what you eat, right? And let's see what you're drinking. And if you're drinking a Mountain Dew every single day, if you just cut that out, it will completely change things, right? Like, that's a huge transformation. And it sounds to me like if someone can focus, that's almost that Mountain Dew. It's like, it should be that simple of a change as long as you can figure it out.
Sure. And be able to convey that message. This is my cause. I'm a nonprofit and I want to do X. Well, the person that's looking to give you the millions or what have you is like, well, why should I care? Touch point, something that engages them. I think years ago, Bob Geldof had a great story to tell about how he started Live Aid. And he said, we always hear about hundreds of thousands of people dying in Africa. And he says, and it's sad and it really touches us. But he was watching a documentary where they showed one mother and she's holding an infant, and that infant dies in her arms from starvation. That touched him because it was not real. It was brought into a context that he could understand. It's a parent, it's a child, and that inspired him to create Live Aid, because he could understand from hundreds of thousands of things the actual cause and case.
I think it's being able to connect with that audience, right? And I mean, from the stage, it's the same thing. When I'm speaking, I want to be able to connect with them, and you only have a few seconds to do it, especially, or they're going to go get their coffee, right? And so it's like being able to connect with them and actually get into their hearts or get into their mind so that they do come all that. Exactly. It's a skill, but it is a skill that I feel that you can learn. Or you can be coached or taught. And obviously that's what you do. Is this something that you were always good at? Like, at what point in your life growing up did you realize, like, I need to do that for myself, but then maybe I'm kind of good at teaching it too?
Well, I think one of the things that I learned as a hard lesson is how to be myself, how to accept myself for who I am, and the talents I could bring or not. When I was in high school, for example, it was a time where I had curly hair, big hair. And
for the audience, she still has that. Right?
But at the time, straight hair was popular. And so I would just like spend hours like straightening, finding out ways to straighten so I could fit in. Yes. It was all about wanting to fit in. And then feeling still a little square peg. Ish, because it wasn't quite happening. I was in a Irish Catholic school. My mother was Mexican. I didn't quite fit in to the model.
Well, and that model is what what everybody sees on the TV. Everybody reads in the Reader's Digest. It's like People Magazine, like whatever it is that they're looking at. You're not fitting in, and you're not seeing that. And that's for especially today's youth, seeing these things constantly bombarded by Instagram. But you're seeing this, and it's obviously affecting you.
Yeah, and so it's like there comes a moment where you get an epiphany where it's like, is it okay to not fit into a standard? How about trying to just be who I am?
What was that moment?
I think it was in college when I started thinking about, well, what am I interested in instead of wanting to just do what everybody else is doing? And I remember like being interested in sailing. I had never sailed and things like that. And I saw a sailing club and I went in and I said, well, I've never sailed, and said, we'll teach you. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I can actually do something I've never done before, never been exposed to. And then I discovered I had a knack for it. Long story less long, I ended up being on the USC sailing team for a couple of years in college. Who knew? Who knew? But it was like being that gave me a lot of freedom to realize you can really do a lot in life. You don't have to fit a mold, or you don't have to rely on just what your experiences, your family's history's been. You can really elevate, move to the side, move left, right, whatever, and be yourself. And that gives you a greater sense of happiness.
Well, you're owning your own individuality and you're not living through other people's perspective. Right?
Exactly.
And I think you letting go of that, I also want to tap that it sounded like you were accepted. Like they were kind enough to let you feel like you belonged and like, come on in. Like, and that does open up.
Okay.
Right? A whole lot. And it's like when you realize like, well, I'm not fitting. I was called an island jumper in high school because I didn't hang out with the stoners and I wasn't a jock and I wasn't good enough to be over here and I wasn't a good looking kid. I was a stick with lips. And it was like, I was just like, I didn't fit in with anybody, but I could communicate with everybody and I could island hop. But I didn't have a specific group, but I also didn't feel there was a point in my life as well where I was like, I don't have a private batting cage. I don't have a private coach for baseball, but I'm good enough to make the team. But I'm not going to be the elite player. But it was like, that was enough. Right. And it was like, as long as I felt like I connected, but I didn't live vicariously through other people. It was like, I had to own my own individuality. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Exactly. And even when you get to that point of it, the epiphany, I think the freedom too is to realize that not everyone is going to like you. And that's okay. You want to be liked or loved or what have you by the people you relate to the most. Treat everyone with kindness and be a good person. But don't feel that if one person doesn't find you to be their cup of tea.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Let them.
Let them. Yeah, exactly.
I had to throw my Mel Robbins in. Yeah. I had to.
That's the brilliant thing is that in part of your acceptance, it's being able to accept that not everyone is going to accept you.
Well, and it doesn't matter if they don't. It's like, I assume you would love me unless I hear otherwise, right? We just had somebody on the other day that had mentioned that too. And it's just like, hey, as long as I don't hear anything bad, like I'm not going to let you take my time away from me. I'm not going to worry about what you think about me, or I'm just going to live my life. I'm just going to keep on forging forward and going through it. And that's one of the hardest things for us to tell our daughter now, because she is at school and she's a young kid and she's like worried about what this girl thinks of her or what this boy thinks. And it's so difficult. And it is very difficult as an adult who's experienced can tell a child, especially your child, like, let them. It's okay. Let them feel it. Don't spend 1 minute. Don't lose sleep over that and just keep going. But it's so difficult to have that epiphany.
But we all have to grow that way. I think we all have to have that experience as part of our journey so that when we get to that epiphany moment, we have that history, all those lessons, the bullying, the girl that goes and we're out of the crowd, all of that will make us stronger, that which does not kill you, right? And so I think that for your daughter, it's just part of growing up and maturing. You are going to have those girls.
Mm-hmm.
That's just part of life.
And you're not going to please everybody.
You're going to have that boss, or you're going to have that coworker. As life evolves, there's always going to be that person. That's why, saying that it's let them and just move on and have your own integrity. Like one of the things that I find important in my life is to live by the golden rule. Treat everyone with respect. Treat everyone as you would like to be treated.
Absolutely.
And somehow it creates a positive karma. Not to get too spiritual here, but the energy that comes from you being kind or you paying it forward some way, helping other people out is amazing. You feel better. And it takes me back to something that I read about a year ago or so, that sociologists, scientists, people got together to define what is at the core of happiness. What makes people happiest? And they came down to one thing: helping others.
I love that.
Isn't that just amazing?
Well, and we all want to know that we make a difference in this world.
Sure.
Right? And you have knowledge and experience and stories that you can help other people. You can mentor someone and you can have a mentee, you can be mentored by someone. And I think one of the greatest rewards is actually seeing somebody rise by you assisting them or helping them through that fire, especially if you've gone through that fire yourself.
Oh, sure. And they gave a very simple example. And they said, what is the happiness you feel if you've taught a child how to swim? You've worked with that child. The child gets an end result. They know how to swim. But the joy that you feel in having taught that child how to swim, that's at the core of happiness. And I thought that was so beautiful.
It is. And I'm experiencing, I remember the day that our daughter learned how to swim. It was in Chicago, and we went to a Star Wars celebration, and we were at a hotel, and we spent about 40 minutes, and she finally got it without anything. And just like to see her light up, and then to know, and we're still in that with our son. He has not done it yet. We didn't do that in Star Wars Celebration in Tokyo, but no, I think that's a great reward. The other thing that when you say that, what comes to my mind is when you help someone on the side of the road. My wife loves to say, should we stop and help that person? And when you do, it makes that person not feel alone and scared because maybe you do have the ability to help them or give them a phone call. But a lot of people put the blinders on. They're like, somebody else will help or somebody else will know better. And they don't realize the power of the reward that comes back to you of helping that person, because you don't know what their situation is. You might be able to help them.
Exactly. And yeah, it was like one time in Los Angeles, I was at a gas station and I see a woman and she's frantically going through her purse to find money for gas. And I looked over, I see like 3 or 4 kids in the car. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. Here. And I filled up her tank. I just did it. And I didn't know her. I will never see her again in my life. But I just thought, I am in the position, thank God, to help this person. I see her stress.
And you've been her.
And at some point,
I've run out of gas and not had it,
or something. And it's just like, that gives a sense of happiness, strangely enough, because you just know that person, you've alleviated their stress, you've made their day in some way, possibly. And even if you hadn't, it's just the idea, somehow it made your day.
Yeah, you raise everybody up, and it's like if somebody doesn't have food on the side of the street, or somebody can't, it's the pay it forwards idea, right? And I love that. I love that the feeling that you get from blowing somebody's mind, right? And you don't know. But you hear stories about this all the time where people come back and they send you a letter with the original amount of $5 that you gave, right? And it's just like you obviously impacted them. And sometimes the little things that we do for people, you don't know how impactful they can be, or how long that impact will last. And I know from experience that my martial arts instructor had no idea that the lessons and habits he taught me would be taught through my students as an instructor,
Sure.
from the stage when I speak to audiences, to my kids, through my book. Like, his story keeps going on. He didn't intend to do that, but I bet it made him happy to know that he saw a kid who got beat up and picked on and made fun of, and gave him the strength and courage to put his own wings on and achieve what he wanted to achieve.
Exactly.
And he may never know that, but maybe he did. And I have to believe that he did. But maybe helping that woman out, one day you're going to run into her, and if you don't straighten your hair, people will recognize you, so you don't know.
Yeah. And somehow that evolves and continues in business, helping out clients that are about to face a crisis situation. For example, in Los Angeles, there was a hospital opening up, and in the hardest hit area of LA, which is called South Central. And they were very nervous about media coming down hard, because the hospital was, like, in a sense, it was a rebuild and a reopening on the same site as a notorious hospital called Drew King Medical Center was shut down by the government because of how badly run it was, and people were dying and things like that. So Drew King leaves, and they open up a brand new hospital, and they call it Martin Luther King Junior Hospital, right? And so the name was still tied in, and they said, we're going to be tied into this again. And I said, well, let me help you get through it.
Yeah.
They were interviewed by NPR. They were like, all national media descends when they open the hospital. And I said, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, is this place going to be like Drew King, where people died in the ER and people were getting shot and things like that? And I said, this is what you're going to say. Today is a new day at MLK. Let me tell you why. And you get your message in, and you get it. And you squelch all the negativity. And when I started seeing that and hearing that on the radio, I was driving and I'm listening to NPR and I'm hearing the interviews, and that phrase is happening, but from the LA County supervisor, people are using this phrase over and over. I said, I have done my job and I have helped them. I have helped this great facility open on a positive. And
it's like every day is a new day. And I don't care where we're at. That reminds me of Harrison Ford. I believe it was in Clear and Present Danger. And he tells the president to say this line, and then he does use it, and it totally stops all negativity when a reporter asks him a question. He's like, "He's a great guy, I have nothing bad to say." And it's just like, well, what else are you going to say? And it just squashes it right away, so that you can move on with the positive. Is that something that so? You're in college, you kind of have this epiphany of like, okay, I can be in my own skin, I can be okay. What got you into broadcasting and entertainment, into television? Like, what was that like? Because you're a woman trying to break into that. What was that?
I knocked on doors, and I really went from being a kid that did not have people in the immediate sphere of television to saying, why not me? This is what I want to do. And I knocked on the doors of Univision at the time, because I'm bicultural, bilingual. And I thought, this is a good place to start. Silence. And I just kept knocking on the door. And I said, well, at least talk to me. Just give me 5 minutes. Give me a chance. And that is something that I've always carried on life. And my thing is, if the worst they can tell you is no, and you could survive that no, you're good. But if you don't try, if you don't knock on that door, you don't know if they're going to say yes.
That is golden. And that is, I want the audience to hear that again, because if you can take that no, you just see things differently, and it's not personal, and you won't be emotional about it. It's just a door that you haven't unlocked yet. Right. And it's like, maybe it will be a yes later, or maybe you just need to go ask for a yes from somebody else. And so you kept knocking on this door, but you only needed that one chance.
Sure.
Right. Most people don't realize that also, is that it only takes one yes, and depending on your career or what you're selling or whatever, it only takes one good yes to get enough on your resume, to get a big enough sales commission, to get the funding to start your business. And it's like, if you never ask, you'll never get that yes.
Exactly. And no can be a great present and learning experience for you. Because when you hear a no, you get a moment to sit back and say, why did they say no? What is it that I can improve upon in either my message delivery, my pitch, or in what I'm doing, or my skill set or something? What is it that lacked so that I didn't get the yes? Because, I think that, and I tell a lot of my mentees at USC, because I still mentor kids, that
I love that we say kids, even though
I know,
because I do that too. I spoke at Whitworth, and it was like, all right, you kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're adults, but at the same time, always they are going to be.
And not only are they adults, but they're adults with double majors and a minor and all of things that I never did in school. And yes, I apologize that you are not kids, you are adults.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I say to them is that in getting no's, it can feel personal. Of course, your feelings are hurt. It's okay to be sad about that, because that's the other thing too. Sometimes we feel we have to be so tough. It's like, it doesn't matter. Move on. No, it does matter. Analyze it, accept it, and then figure out, how do I get the yes next time?
Is that what you also tell your clients, not only your mentees, but like when you work with people and you're working with them, and you're like, how do we get them to say yes? How do you close the deal, whether that is from the stage or whether that's on film or on screen? Like, is that the main goal? Like
Sure.
Are you trying to tell your clients, put yourself in the audience's shoes, and would you buy from you? Would you want to listen? Or do you want to go get coffee? And when you do that to someone, or you tell them to do that, is there the epiphany? Like, how long does it take for somebody to have that epiphany?
Well, this is how we do our training. Like, let's put it with executives, and this is for a big business pitch, or in media, think of it as also media training, but let's focus on business pitch. I put you in the audience seat. I get you up there, you do your cold pitch, and we are taping you. We're recording you. And then we sit you down and say, okay, Blue, let's take a look. Let's take a look at how you spoke. I said, I'm disengaged.
Oh, the pain of these people, though. I can totally, because
it's all confidential.
Every acting class, right? But even as an actor, I remember doing acting classes, and it's like when they film you and they turn that, you're like, oh, it's the nerve, and they're not going to like me, or I'm going to suck, or and so I can completely put myself in their shoes.
Exactly, and seeing yourself, it's like, oh wow, well, okay, and then we say these are the areas of improvement. Let's teach you those skills right now. And you will polish them. I mean, you don't turn over 100%, but you certainly start to catch. Right. Oh gosh, when I'm sitting down, I'm doing this a lot.
Rocking back and forth.
It's a habit. How do we stop that habit? We teach you. I tend to stutter a lot, or just go, We teach you how to do a pregnant pause, to gather your thoughts, so that you don't find yourself having to say, another thing is,
what is that? What is that one little trick that you would tell the audience? Like, how do you
that's
stop?
Part of my thing. It's like teaching you how to stop and really think in terms of speaking in sound bites. And that's what we do. We teach you how to do that.
And that all goes back to what you had originally said about, like, what is your quote? What is your soundbite? What is going to get the audience to engage?
Exactly. And we also teach, like when we do media training, an interview isn't just about you sitting there and answering questions.
I know.
You have
you're
a point.
Going off on me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your point is to get your message points out. How do you do that? How do you make your interview opportunity the most effective moment for your business or your cause or your program? How do you do that? Well, we teach you how to pivot and slide and manage your interview, so it's really the best use of your time.
It's not a waste of time.
Yeah. Exactly. And you see a positive return. Manage the interview so that you know how to get out of the traps of a negative statement. How do you do that?
Well, it's like when you're interviewed by a news article or a newspaper or something like that, or even a news station, and they interview you, and then whatever they put on live, it's not what you that's not really the message I was trying to get across. Like, that wasn't the good part. That wasn't the heart of it. And I can see people say that all the time. I know so many people who have experienced that.
Sure.
And it seems almost like when they are interviewing you, Get your sound point out.
Exactly. And focus.
Let it focus.
And most times when people say, well, they took the smallest part of my interview
Right.
and that's
Cherry
what
pick.
they put. Well, because you talked and talked and talked. And then you've got somebody, a reporter or somebody editing,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know you and they just cherry pick a good moment and throw it in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? What if you focused your interview in such a way that you say less, but more powerfully? And then whatever they cherry pick is important.
Mm-hmm. And it's all on your value, your brand, your image, or the point you're trying to get across.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
You're talking about feeding children. Focus on feeding children and don't say, oh, I used to sail in college and blah, 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 because then it's all about feeding children. And you don't give that room for them to run about your days in college, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
You're focused. And we teach you how to do that, how to sit there. And I'll give you one of the oldest reporter tricks, silence. I'll ask you a question and you give me an answer and then I sit back. What is your first?
Oh, it's uncomfort, right?
You
feel
you're
uncomfortable. Yes.
And so you start filling in the air. You
Mm-hmm.
start talking. You lose your focus. That's where a lot of people trip up on their interviews. So I teach clients, when you sit back and that reporter just looks back at you, you just look back at them.
We're having a stare
And
off
let
right
them,
now.
yes, exactly. And let them feel that discomfort that they have to pick up and ask the next question.
But that also works with like going back and forth, the tennis
Mm-hmm.
match, right? And that's what really creates that camaraderie or the synergy within an interview or a pitch,
Mm-hmm.
or it's the engagement of the audience. And movies that are horrible, it's just like up and down. It's like, but if you can follow a timeline
Mm-hmm.
and you're bringing the audience along for the journey or the story, that's the best thing to do. And that's what like great TED Talks do as well. It's like they bring you along for the story.
Mm-hmm.
And from the state, I try to do the same thing. Bring the audience along with me with a story that has an overall arc and theme and a message, but all along the way, every one of those things is about feeding children, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like, as long as the audience knows this is what we're talking about, and at the end, you're going to get this payoff, which is some kind of call to action or some kind of content or value that you can take with you and then apply to your life.
Exactly. And also what's really important is know how to read the room. Listen to what the client is telling you or the potential client. I was in a business pitch where the people pitching they had their whole program, they had their many slides and things like that. Client sitting there and says, I don't want to hear the stats. I know all the stats. Just tell me what your pitch is. And they said, but we've done such a great job in putting together stats that we've got to run some of these by you. And I'm sitting back going, you've just lost it.
Yeah.
Because the client wants you to hear them. And the first thing you do is not hear them. You're going your way. Or like looking in, and I see this a lot, is that you've done a PowerPoint that has like 8 points all over there. And then you're speaking. Your poor audience is there going, do I look at the slides or do I look at them? And they're not absorbing you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create that presentation? And that's what we do too. We help clients from A to Z. What is it that you're going to put on that PowerPoint that they care about? Are you going with stats that they can't absorb? You're just going rapidly on this.
Overwhelmed.
They're overwhelmed. And then they're like pulling out the phone under the table and checking
or
for
pretending
messages.
to take a picture of the screen, right? And when I speak, I don't use notes and I don't use PowerPoint. I do have one slide unit that I use for Dark Side for Life, but it shows so many visuals, right? But I have learned that the more you put up on the screen, the more the audience pays attention to that versus you.
Exactly.
And I would also say that from experience of being able to read the room, if I'm reading from notes and my head is down, I'm not seeing if people are playing with their pens, if they're like going for coffee. I'm not seeing if people are looking at me. Are they yawning? Are they talking with each other? But to be able to read the room, and that, my wife always tells me that the best I am on stage is when I go off script. because she knows my story. She knows everything. But to be able to interact with the audience on call at any moment in time, that's when my best shines. Like to be able to bring out like something that was ad-libbed and it would only happen at that moment.
Sure.
And that's some of the most memorable stories and experiences that I have from the stage that are the most valuable, that people come up and they say, oh my gosh, I really thought that wouldn't have happened if I was looking at my screen or if I was looking up on there and I was being boring from a speaker. I have to engage with the audience and being able to read them and to connect, like you had mentioned at the very beginning. So I think that's so powerful for people to hear.
And I learned a lot of that taking classes in comedy. Getting up on stage and doing comedic routines. Comedians are some of the best people to read the audience. They know when a joke is going well, how to hit it 2 or 3 times, you know, turn it around, do this, that. And when they also know that when the story is dying, how to like exit and go into the next thing. That is also very applicable to when you're doing a business pitch or whether you're at a convention stage. It never hurts to say, you know, we've talked a little bit about stats, but what we're really interested in is X. Let's go to slide 20 and just skip through. Everyone feels
relieved,
warmed up
right?
and they're warming up to you because you are reading them, you're getting them. And comedians are the best at this. And there's, you know, if people that are young, starting their careers and wanting to learn good presentation, there's nothing like having to sit down and write a comedy routine and getting up and delivering.
Well, and take an improv class or do that open mic. And I still watch comedians now. I loved Eddie Murphy when he would do the full arc. And it would be like, I love that when I speak, I start with something and then I come full circle at the very end. And if you're not paying attention at the beginning, you miss that end. But I want you to hear it because that's the payoff. That's like he came full circle. And I will also say to the audience that when you do present something or you speak, the same joke won't work every time. And if you're not reading the audience, you won't know that. And I can give the same speech to 5 different groups and it just doesn't hit and land. Certain things don't land on the certain, wherever I am or whatever, it's the day or maybe I'm off or whatever. But knowing that the joke I'm about to throw or the point that I'm about to throw or the long pregnant pause that I'm about to give, if it didn't hit, I can't see that if I'm not reading the audience live. Like if my head is not up looking because I'm expecting it, I know what's coming. They don't. But if I don't get the reaction that I thought, to be able to pivot immediately on stage, and I learn that from comics all the time, to be able to do that improv is so valuable. Oh yeah.
And that's where you go from reading a speech and the teleprompter to actually taking a look at people, and then what happens, it's magic. Your delivery is more genuine because you're not saying, another thing that's really important about the land, is that you're not doing that. You're talking from the heart.
Yes.
You're looking at 3 cue words on a little sheet of paper or a big sheet of paper and saying, okay, I'm talking about saving trees. And you start to talk about saving trees, your next point, and then what is your callback maybe to saving trees, and then the button, your closing. How is it that you are going to say, get your checkbook out, let's save trees? So that's what we work with clients. It's how do you get me so compelled by the end of your message and your genuine message that I'm saying, I'm all about saving trees too.
Well, and it's people being able to relate to you authentically and that organic transition. And it's like, I think that we tend to basically gravitate towards that. You can be magnetic from the stage or from a pitch if you are more authentic and speaking from the heart, because that speaks to me much more than somebody just reading from a note page, for sure. When you started your business here, obviously you're starting fresh. did you, besides being from California and dealing with Spokane, like what were some of the challenges for you to come in with all of this experience, all of this knowledge, and to be a premium expertise marketing company? Like how did you overcome some of the challenges that you probably still face?
Oh, I'm still overcoming. I put out my shingle for Elevate in January, and it's still a challenge of overcoming. I think one of the things is starting to network, putting myself out there, and making connections, just letting people know this is what I do, and also having that ability to pivot. And a great example of that is in California, in Los Angeles, you have very aggressive media. And crisis management, proactive crisis management, is of paramount importance to healthcare institutions, to manufacturers, things. They want to have a plan in place. In case, because if somebody falls and slices their arm off in their operation, they know that the television and things are going to be right there. It's that kind of town. Here, it's not that important. I have talked to people in many sectors, and I said, one of the things we do is proactive crisis management. And they're like, oh, that's nice. It's not something, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's a little more laid back here.
And that's okay. And so it's like, okay, where is the better opportunity? What do people need
here? Yeah.
And how do I tailor the business to satisfy those needs? I see great opportunity in elevating businesses that are getting ready to catapult, that want to get to that next level, whether it's regionally or nationally. How do you get up on that big stage? What I see a lot is that you have like 4 people wanting to get up for a big presentation. The CEO, a lot of times, is very good at speaking. They've done it for a long time. But it's that third person that gets up to talk that is like just brings the whole presentation down. And when they're up against 3 companies, they lose the business. And they may be very, very good at what they do, but they just don't know how to message or how to take over the stage in a compelling manner, how to get that soundbite out. So I'm excited in the audience. And I think that's the opportunity I offer.
I love that. I experienced that in Tokyo at Star Wars Celebration because I took the stage after Ryan Gosling came on. And so it was like, how do I fill the seats after Ryan gets on board, right? That's hard. Like I have a little competition here, and honestly, he wins. But it was like, how do you do that? And it's like, you have to be able to speak from your heart, and you have to be able to connect with the group and say, this message still is here, and I have this value in A, B, and C. And this are the points that I want to get across. But it was always hard to go up after Ryan. So
and looking at it from every aspect. I said earlier that I'm very visual. So I work with a client in New York that they wanted to do a very big pitch in Las Vegas. They were speaking at a convention, but beyond that, they wanted to connect with business owners. They're very young. And I said, okay, you've got to dress the part. You've got to have your shoes nice and polished. The IT guy is like, well, I want to wear my cap backwards and I'm me. And I said, well, guess what? That's not going to fly with a decision maker who is more than likely more my age and more used to a different level. Adapt yourself. Know your audience and what the expectation is from a visual standpoint as well as your delivery. How are you going to impress people so that they do want to talk to you at the end of when you say your speech and you're one of 6, what is going to compel the businesses out there to say, I got to talk to Blue. Let me catch up with him.
Well, and let's drive on that a little bit, because it's that going that 3 to 5% more in anything that you're doing. What intent and purpose are you putting behind? What is going to help you stand out from the rest of the crowd?
Exactly.
Right. And is that a better communication skill? Is it the way that you dress? Is it the way that you hold yourself up? And it's like, you and I have discussed that with me from stage, and like the way that I look, or if I have a wrinkly Star Wars shirt versus I have an Armani suit on. It's like image does matter. And what are you trying to reach? And what do you want your audience to know? right? Like, who are you and what do you want the audience to know you as? And does that fit? Right. And I think that in any industry that goes, I can't just walk into, if I prepare for an interview and I just walk in, just because I like to wear joggers, for example, you might not get the job. You might not get your foot in the door because you're wearing joggers. And it's so important to spend a little time on your brand and your image because there's only one you. And nobody else is going to do it for you. So how do you stand out? What do you tell these the students in college, like as their mentor, like how do you tell them if you want to get ahead in life and succeed in no matter what you're doing, what is it that you can do to stand out? Yeah, exactly. And I'll give you a great example. With the students that I work with, I say, they get an opportunity they go into companies, it's their first internship experience. How are you going to network? I teach them how to network to meet. I said, everyone loves the cute intern. So you ask for appointments with the CEO, with just 10 minutes to meet the CEO, the CFO, the head of marketing, all the different areas. Meet with them, have it together, have your list of questions. Be prepared. Be respectful in how you go to dress and meet with the CEO. That's not your day to be, yourself. You're late or in your surfer wear or whatever it is. That's the day that you button it up and you have it together and you have 10 minutes. Be respectful of your time. Go. And then the most important thing, and this is where people tend to just not stand out. I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say and you haven't said it, but continue. Follow through. I knew it. Follow up. Yes. People don't follow up. And I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to the USC bookstore, buy those cards, like little note cards that have the little, just blank cards. You are going to write a 3-sentence thank you note and you're going to send it to each individual. Nobody does that anymore. Exactly. Stand out. Exactly. That is your opportunity to stand out. And be remembered. And be remembered. And you just include your email and say, if you want to work there at some point, just say, please keep me in mind or what have you. But you just write a simple note and you deliver it, get it delivered to that person. They will never forget that. I learned that early in life. There was one time for a big city in California, we had a big press conference on something. And my team came in, and for some reason, the speech got changed, and we needed to make copies. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not my office. I'm in the mayor's office of the city. What do I do? And an assistant came and said, I'll help you. And I said, oh, thank you. And we made the copies and things like that. Success. I mailed that person a note and just said, thank you for this. I really appreciated that. Took me 2 minutes. Sent it out. A month later, I go to the same office to meet with the mayor of that city and things. That note was sitting on that assistant's desk. It taught me the value that people take to a thank you, to a follow-up. When we do a networking seminar, and one of the things that I tell people is get to know the person, be interested in the person. Don't just go up and say, Blue, do you know I do publicity services and I have this thing and I think it would be great. No. Here's my card. Call me. You feel like, ugh. And then
you're pitched and you feel negative.
And by the 8th person, they're going to say, cringe, don't let this person near me. She's going to hard sell me. How different would it be that I'd say, Blue, so tell me about why you're here. What do you like to do? Now, what's your plan for vacation this year? Here, let's exchange cards. I do publicity and things. It may be of interest to you. How different is that approach? How different is it if I follow up with you and say, hey, how did that regatta go?
Well, it means that you're paying attention to me when I talk.
And you're building a relationship.
And that it is about making a meaningful and genuine relationship versus just like banter back and forth. And I wrote that in my book about ask someone their favorite color.
Yeah.
Right. And if you say what is your favorite color?
Green.
Green. Do you know why green is your favorite color?
You know, it has changed, and I think I could tell you why.
Okay.
During the pandemic, I was like, business was shut down for a lot of things, and I was like either going to kill my husband or have to do something.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like frantic times. So I went back to school.
Mhm.
Actually, it was Steve's idea. I took a class in horticulture, and then I took another, and another because the pandemic kept lasting, to the point where UCLA sent me an email saying, you're supposed to pay for your certificate and your degree. And I said, what do you mean? You're
have enough
3
credits.
classes from graduating. That's how. So I ended up graduating and walking in 2022 at UCLA.
Congratulations.
Who knew?
Yeah.
But through all the plants and that, green became more centered in my life.
And so what I've done is I've taken this onion and I've taken a layer off, and I start to get to know the core of you, right? What inspires you, what motivates you, what gets you to do things at scale or things that you didn't know you could do or want to believe that you could do. And it also connects us now that you and I can talk about that.
Mhm.
And you had told me in your past that you had a problem with straightening your hair and like trying to fit in. And that really resonated with me because I also didn't fit in.
Mhm.
I didn't belong. I wore a camouflage hat. I walked around. I was just like this nerd, and I was picked on for the name. And it was just like, I knew what that was like, trying to fit in when I wasn't. I was that circle trying to fit into that peg block, and it just wasn't working. And I think that that's so powerful. And I want people to hear that and understand that it is that message that you need to keep taking with you.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. And you got picked on for blue. Try Sybil. That was a tough one too. And then when I lived in Mexico City for a couple of years, Sybil is not the name that rolls off the tongue.
sure.
It's like, ¿cómo?
¿Cómo?
¿Cómo se escribe? You know, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. And so it puts you a little bit more back into the square peg mode.
Yeah.
But I even embraced that. And I said, yeah, I'm a Scottish Mexican. Deal with it. And a friend ended up naming me Mexican. So it's just like finding your uniqueness and
Yes.
celebrating that. And saying it's okay.
Yeah, I love that. Celebrating your uniqueness.
Mhm.
Because it is that standing out. It's about going that 3 to 5% more and getting out from the crowd, because there's a million podcast hosts. There's
Sure.
a million marketing companies.
Mhm.
And what are you doing every day to work your brand and your image so that people not only see you, but also can relate to you and remember you?
Mhm.
And the follow-up is gold, Sybil.
It's gold. And it's so easy and so underutilized. And you and I both hear it all the time. It's like, I'll call you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get together for coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And it just never happens.
Mhm.
I say, let's get together for coffee. And as you know, I send you a couple of dates. This is my availability. What works for you?
Oh,
And if I'm not interested in doing that, I'm just not going to say that. I'll be polite. Great meeting you.
yeah. Or if you're the one sending, you're going to stop sending.
Exactly.
Because like, well, this person doesn't want to hang out. So it's like, obviously I'm not important enough. Right. I love that you mentioned that about sending dates and times, because that was one of the greatest things that I learned to do cold outreach or cold emails or cold calling. It's like when you connect with a potential or a discovery call or something, offer them a few times.
Mhm.
I'd say, do these 3 dates work for you? Are these times between X, Y, and Z? Pitch it up for them.
Yeah.
Like literally make it easier for them to either A, say no, or say yes,
Mhm.
and show that their time is valuable.
Exactly.
And I think that's absolutely golden. So the follow-up, and then also giving them that opportunity.
Sure.
And hope that if the more barriers you remove from people, the
Mhm.
easier it is for them to say yes.
Exactly. Or I always put the 3 times dates. If none of these work for you, let me know what works the following week. And so it just gives them that extra opportunity,
Freedom, right?
freedom.
Mhm.
And if they're saying, hey, I'm headed to Europe for the next month, respect that. Maybe that's their way of brushing you off. Who knows?
Or maybe not, but then you
Or
have to
maybe
follow
not.
up again.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
100%.
you just say, like, sometimes I'll send people notes saying, oh my gosh, I saw this and thought of you. And I send them the link to something.
But you
And
wouldn't
it's-
know that if you did not start to unravel that onion
Exactly.
from beginning. Because if you just know what their name is and what they do, you would have no idea that their kid loves softball. You have no idea that my producer, Brennan, has twins, right? And it's like they play soccer or they play basketball. When you start to know someone deeper, that just opens up relationships and they want to help you.
Exactly.
And maybe they will and maybe they won't, but you have no idea that card might end up on somebody's desk. And then when you walk in, it impacts you that much more and you realize that you made a difference.
Exactly.
I love that.
And the other thing is your integrity. I like to say that I have an excellent reputation with press. Why? Because I don't lie. I don't hide the truth or anything for clients. And sometimes one time I had to cancel a client right on the spot. It was in not even in Los Angeles. It was further south from Los Angeles. It was a major dairy. And they produced organic milk, among things. And they had an inkling that there might be a tiny thing called listeria
right.
in one of their batches.
Right.
And I said, okay, we've got to do a product recall. Let's get that kind of thing in place. Where is this sold and things like that? Let's announce it to the press and things. Oh, no. We don't want to tell anybody.
The cost, the shame, the guilt,
and I said,
the bad
this
press.
will cost you so much more if one person gets sick and they trace it back to the product because you did not do a public recall.
What happened?
Well, they were their heels and they said, we don't want to announce it. We're just going to yank it off. We're just letting you know. And I said, I am done. I will not have my name attached to your company anymore. Why? Because when this hits the fan, and I said, and there's a likelihood that you might be lucky, but more than likely you're not. I don't want any TV station, any reporter attaching me to this.
Absolutely.
To this. And the integrity gets you far. And so when I call
and your reputation,
press, absolutely. And so when I call press and I said, this is the story, this is what we're doing, they know I'm going to deliver the exact thing. And it's straight for them. I respect their work.
It's safe. They can count on you.
And I respect the client and I put the client in the best light possible.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
But your integrity, your reputation is not worth the extra 10 grand that you might get or whatever from that piece of business. Just not worth it.
Well, and with my name, it's so unique and rare. It's like, I got to be a good kid, right? Like I have to. It's like, there's not many blues out there. Like John Johnson is going to get remembered. Like you might be able to disappear, but with Blue, it was very difficult. And Sybil as well. It's like we have unique names where people will remember you. And so the integrity and the reputation is so important. But that also ties in to your brand and your image. Exactly. How do you want to be remembered and how do you want people to see you? And I love that. And I love that's what you're doing. How can people find out more about your business with Elevate and then like maybe with the people that help bring that to life? Like it's not only you. Like how does that work?
I've been really lucky, settling in Spokane and then just deciding to pivot my business to focus more in Spokane. I approached a great group of people at Hamilton Studio. I had done work with Don Hamilton in one of the Mac exhibitions and just loved them. And so when I thought, let's bring back the media training and things, I knew I needed to connect with a video company that could help. So I went over mainly to just have a cup of coffee with Don and pick his brain. And he immediately said, I'll work with you. We had such a great experience working together that I want to work with you again. So he is on my team. In Los Angeles, I had worked with a company called Social Selinator. I brought them to a couple of clients that had their SEO, all social media. And so I'd work with this great guy named Jock Breitwieser. And Jock, I called him up and I said, I am doing this. And one of the offerings we want to do is social media and be able to offer clients, whether we're doing convention production, because Don Hamilton and I were doing that as well, and just do live social media, really extend the audience. So who should I talk to? What should I do, Jock? I'm in. Whatever you're doing, I'm in. Wow, I didn't expect that. And it goes back to reputation, to your work things. He says, Sybil, I could work with you any day, anytime.
And it's fun, it's easy.
It's fun, it's easy. And I just know that you're straight-laced. You're going to do it right. And so Jock is on board with that with Social Selinator. With Don, not only does he have an incredible production facility that really replicates a TV studio. So for clients that I want to get up there and rehearse presentations, it's there. They get to see themselves in light, full light. But we also are able to prepare people for conventions. So a convention comes into town, or you might be local and be speaking at X or Y. We'll help you get stage ready. We'll help you learn how to read a teleprompter, should that be the case. We'll get your presentation up so it looks glorious, your pre-videos, all of that. We can do that together. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing there with him and Jock. And we're also looking to expand with other entities that might be in town, whether it's convention groups or that kind of thing. I'm open to discussing how to do more business. But they can find us on elevatestrategy.com. That's the website that we have. I'm also pretty present on LinkedIn, and you could look me up. I love to talk, as you can tell. So if you have a question or something, just reach out to me.
When you're giving with your time.
Yes.
And you advise people, and I would want people to know that it's like, you don't have to say, hey, can you meet me for a whole day? It's like maybe 5 minutes, maybe that 10 minutes, maybe let's go for coffee. But if you want to meet with Sybil, you have to follow up. Well, I am excited, to be working with you and collaborating with you, and you helping me, because you've always advised me and you've been a mentor to me, and I appreciate you because you're a fountain of knowledge, and I appreciate that. And I'm just super excited with what you're doing for our community in Spokane with the symphony and with your own business and just bringing our community up. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and helping me.
Thank you for having me here in Spokane. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about all the possibilities, about all the people I'm meeting. It is a great city.
It really is. And I'm so glad to be back. And I'm so glad to have met you. So thank you very, very much, Sybil.
Oh, thank you, Blue.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for listening to Navigating No. If this episode brings you value, or you know someone who could benefit from it, the best way to support the show is by sharing and subscribing. It's completely free and helps us reach more people. And if you have any questions, feedback, or guests you'd like me to interview, drop a comment while you're there. I'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, thank you for tuning in. And let's continue sharing optimism and positivity.